Yo, this video is going to be about the first time I took LSD. I don't know, in one word, magic. This was on December 4th, 2015, so it was wintertime, pretty cold outside, couldn't really enjoy nature, so I decided to take it in my house, in my room. I had 2 tabs at the time, but I decided to only take one because, first off, I'd never tried this before, and I thought maybe I should go on the safe side. I could always take another tab, later in the trip if I needed it. And it ends up, for my first time, I definitely didn't need a second tab. So I took the tab in the daytime, maybe late morning, early afternoon. I had watched like some videos on LSD, and there was talk of fake drugs that seemed like LSD but they really weren't. Particularly popular LSD knockoff was a certain type of drug that I had heard you really need to leave it on your tongue for you to get the effect. If you just swallowed it right off, you wouldn't get the effect. So I decided that I wasn't going to leave this on my tongue. I was going to swallow it right away. And then I would kind of know, at least, oh, it's not that other knockoff drug. This kind of must be LSD. The source that I got it from, they had tried it before, and they were pretty sure it was LSD. So it wasn't like I was just taking it randomly. I had someone who could tell me, yeah, it's probably LSD. But I just wanted that extra assurance, so that's why I decided to do it. So I put it on my tongue, but then I just swallowed it right away, and I waited. I had been like dancing, listening to music, chilling out, and 50 minutes went by, and I was like, I don't know. I had felt kind of like a little bit of something right away, but I don't know if it was placebo effect or what it was. I don't think this is it. I don't feel it. Maybe this isn't real LSD. 20 minutes later, an hour and 10 minutes had gone by. I started to feel it, and I started to trip hard. Yeah, the way the wood grain was flowing and growing, it almost reminded me of roots or something like that, roots of a plant growing. And when I would look at pictures in my room, like I have a picture of Bruce Lee, I could see his face kind of like morphing a little bit, almost like his expression was changing. And at one point I noticed I could be like, smile, now frown, and it would kind of morph in that way. Another thing that made me really feel like what I had taken was true LSD was I could almost just describe it as like clean. The whole experience felt very clean. The substance felt very clean, as opposed to some of the reports of other knockoff LSD drugs. I just felt like I was in good hands. I could feel the spirit of the molecules, I guess, of the LSD. Now, during this trip, I was keeping a trip journal like the last time, and the floating glowing letters happened again. This happens pretty much every time I trip because I write every time I trip, and the letters would grow and glow and float above the page. On this trip, I looked at myself in the mirror a little bit more. I had heard about people having interesting experiences when they look at themselves in the mirror tripping on LSD. And I have a friend who kind of believes that you can see a different aspect of yourself if you stare into a mirror long enough. So I didn't even have to stare. And when I looked at myself, I got a very, very weird idea in my head. I looked at myself and what I thought was, I'm an elf. And I know that sounds really, really crazy and ridiculous. And I'm not really into that sort of thing to begin with. Like when people in the New Age community talk about fairies and elves and those kinds of creatures, I kind of just, tune out. But after this experience, I have to take a second look at those kinds of things because I was just sure of it. My appearance didn't change that much, but it was almost like my features were a little bit more detailed or a little bit, and kind of a little bit more sharp. Maybe like my chin and my nose were a little bit more sharp. It wasn't even about like my ears looking that different. I pretty much looked the same, but my features were just a little bit more, I don't know, sharp. And I just had this idea like, it's so obvious, I'm an elf. And I had never heard about this kind of thing happening to anyone. It wasn't until after the trip, like a day or two later, that I looked up, elven information, tripping, stuff like that. And I ran across articles about people who believe they were elves in their past life, or that they, are an elf in a human body or something like that. And that's kind of what the feeling I got was, that I was an elf experiencing this life in a human body. Now I know a lot of people who watch this video will not believe that, and that's okay. I just want to share that part of the experience so that anyone out there who's watching, who's gone through the same thing, will kind of be like, okay, it wasn't just me. Maybe there's something to this. And it doesn't have to mean that it's necessarily true. At least it's something to think about. So tying in with my other trip, where I started to realize that my soul had a character, the character came out even more during this trip. I felt like I was starting to be more like some kind of elf or something like that. Like being some sort of scribe or some sort of person of knowledge. That idea came through to me. Later on, after the trip, I had read about elves are usually associated with knowledge and wisdom. So even though I thought that I was some kind of elf or something, everyone has some sort of ability or power that they haven't unlocked. They're not connected with their soul as much as they could be. So I kind of got the feeling of that. And I also wrote down, we're our own inherent source of magic. So nowadays, everyone's really about external stuff, technology, material, wealth, all kinds of external things. But I just really got that in my head of that, the magic comes from us. We create the technology. The technology doesn't create us. I mean, it can influence us, but we're the source of all of this. We're the source of a lot around us. So one of the really weird things on LSD, and I experienced this the first time I tripped on LSD and the second time, is that electronics behave a little bit differently. The screen can look really weird. And this is the kind of thing that I don't think it wasn't like I was seeing the screen and in my mind the screen started doing weird things. It was more like if someone had been standing next to me and they were completely sober, they would have seen the same thing. The icons and everything on the screen almost looked like it was in water, like it was underwater. It's kind of weird and wavy. And the icons started to glitch. Like I would see them in one spot and then another spot, and they would flash that they were there and then flash that they weren't there, like say Google Chrome or Internet Explorer or iTunes, whatever it is. When you scroll over to where the icons are, they were doing weird things. And like I said, it was the type of thing that, like, I knew if someone else was next to me and they were sober, they'd be able to see it. It was really weird. Another interesting thing that happened to me too was that I was watching this Ralph Smart Infinite Waters video, and for some reason it was playing, but then it just randomly froze. I think the video had already finished, but instead of going back to like the thumbnail image or just any image that it was on a second ago, it froze on this one image of him, and he looked very otherworldly and he kind of looked like an elf too, but he wasn't smiling and he was just staring straight at me from the computer. It was a little bit creepy. And I don't know how it would freeze on that one frame when that frame wasn't the thumbnail. It wasn't the last frame of the video. It wasn't the first frame of the video. It was just this random frame of him staring straight at me, not smiling, just like. So the album that I was listening to for most of the trip was Parliament's Mothership Connection. That album was perfect for my first LSD trip. It's perfect for any LSD trip, any psychedelic trip. It was just right on point. It was on point. So the trip lasted a very long time. It lasted until nighttime. It was kind of winding down, but I could still feel different. And it didn't really, I wasn't like back to the sober state until I woke up the next morning. And even then, obviously I had that LSD afterglow or whatever it is. I enjoyed this trip a lot, and I felt like I learned a lot from it. And I wrote down a lot of different things I didn't even put in this video. Thank you for listening to my LSD trip report. Please subscribe and Mori Paz.